Hi everyone, I'm Katarina. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to bring you this lovely, really gorgeous looking card today. So I'm going to use my favorite technique, heat embossing, to create a stained glass log. Now, I did create stained glass logs before using all different techniques and all different mediums. Never heat embossing though, so I really am excited to bring you this technique and this card today. I really hope you enjoy watching me creating this card and perhaps craft along. I'm starting off with a piece of heavyweight 300 GSM cardstock measuring 3 3/4 by 7 3/4, and I am using a stencil from Tonic Studios. I will come back with a video very soon sharing you which set did I cut this from. This is one of my newest additions to my stash and I really love this stencil. So I'm using Twisted Citron and Broken China today to create my background, and you could see on the bottom my hand is covering it. Now I have masked off parts of this because as you can see on the top, the half squares is how the stencil finishes, and I masked those little triangles off because I will have to move my stencil down lower so I can cover the other half of this cardstock as well, and I just find it easier to line up the full squares rather than having to faff with those half squares or triangles in there. I really love the way these two colors work together and the gorgeous blend that they create. That green is just really gorgeous, so vibrant and real fresh colors. So in here you can see that I have moved my stencil up, lining up with the squares that I already ink blended on, and I just came back and finishing off the whole cardstock just using exactly the same technique as before. So once the ink blending is finished, look at that gorgeous green in there. You can see that the ink had bled underneath the stencil here and there on some parts of this card. It does not bother me, not for this card, not for these techniques that we'll be using today. So here is this lovely pink splatter box, my pretty splatter box. This box from Chloe's Creative Cards and it's been sitting on my shelf for such a long time now, waiting for me to give it a job. So I promoted it to be my pretty pink splatter box. In here I'm just using black acrylic paint and some water on it, spritz some water on it to dilute it down a bit, and I created these splatters all over my card. Now with the black it looks like a little hot mess right now, but it will all make a whole lot of sense in a little while. At this point I put this aside to dry and I had to rush off to work anyway, so I will finish it off when I'm back from my work, just about right now. The magic of editing, right? So this is it fully dry a couple of hours later. And I promised myself that in my card making I will be using the products that I've been getting as prizes for winning Card Maker of the Year 2023 competition. And today I'm going to choose one of the dies that arrived from Pretty Gets Gritty, and this is the Crazy Daizy die. I think I had this technique for this die in my mind ever since I first seen it. So in here I'm just trying to work around. There's a little smudge from the paint where you can see on the right hand side just where the leaf of the daisy is. And I'm kind of trying to work it so I can cut that one away. But I need to work out a sentiment where and how I would be able to place it. So this die is from Creative Expressions and also one of my winning prizes. I've used this one before in a card, I believe, on a video. And I've cut out several of these and I'm just trying to line up to make sure that I will have enough room for a sentiment as well. At this point I wasn't sure which ones from the boxed sentiments, the birthday wishes, I will be using because it cuts out several all at the same time. But I made sure that there's enough room for me to make a choice later on. So now I've cut out the daisy out of the panel that I have just ink blended, and I'm going to keep this flower and that little triangle shape which is sitting between the flower and the panel now, but everything else could be just discarded at this point. I don't need those, but you can see how these dies would be lovely for so many different techniques, like a paper piercing perhaps would be lovely too. So I've cut out the same die from black cardstock twice, and I'm just going to layer the two black ones on top of each other now, and I'm just using dry clear glue here. I am going to need a piece of acetate, and I'm using heat resistant acetate by Crafter's Companion, and I'm just cutting the acetate just a tiny bit smaller than my panel to make sure that it will fit behind it. I'm going to cover the back of my panel in double-sided tape, and once I removed all the backings, I'm gonna come in with a little bit of a glossy accent, and I'm going to fill out the little spaces where I couldn't go in with the tape in there. I love using glossy accents on acetate. It dries clear and dries real nice and strong. Once the acetate is adhered to the back of this piece of cardstock, I'm going to take that piece first of all, which I've cut out of this part of the panel, and I'm going to use glossy accents to adhere it to the back of the acetate. Now this step is very optional. You don't need to do this if you're not using different colors heat embossing powder like I will be using on the petals, but I think this just creates lovely little wells in there, a bit of a dimension for me to trap the heat embossing powder into. You'll see in a minute what I mean. But first of all, I'm going to use glossy accents again on the black piece of these flowers, the double layered flowers, and I'm going to adhere this onto the front of my card. I don't always use black to decorate my cards, but for this one I think it just really makes a whole lot of a difference. So I used the glossy accents, and I'm not worried if the glossy accent just kind of uses a little bit onto the acetate, because we will be heat embossing on those and we'll cover that up. So now I just piece that little bit of a background back between the stems of the flower and leaves. So the embossing powders I'm starting with today are the Razzleberry and Orangeade by Wow, and these are both translucent embossing powders. So you can get opaque ones or translucent ones. These are translucent, and I will show you exactly what it means in a little minute once we've heat embossed this part. I'm taking my Versamark embossing ink and a Versamarker old pen. I don't even think there's any ink left in that one, but my ink pad is very juicy, and I'm just picking up some ink from there to add to every second petal to start with. Once I have added, made sure that there's a good coverage on all those petals, I am gonna come in with my first color, and this is the Razzleberry, the pink one. I'm going to scatter it all over that flower head, and I'm gonna come in just with a little bit of a cleanup action in here. I'm just trying to remove the embossing powder from the petals, which I don't want it to be on. Even if the few little bits stay there, it really doesn't make any difference to the end result. And now I'm tipping it back into its little jar, and I'm going to use my Wow heat embossing tool on a higher setting, and I'm making sure it's very hot before I melt the powder. So now I'm gonna come back and doing exactly the same thing on the other 4 petals using the Orangeade embossing powder. Just exactly the same thing again. I'm gonna make sure the heat tool is really hot before melting the powder. And once the orange is melted, I'm gonna come back with a bit of green for the leaves, and it is by Wow in the Park. Now, this is not a hard technique to do if you know what you're doing. This is my second attempt at this card. However, the first one I made so many mistakes with, and I will show you at the very end of this video exactly how that card turned out, what's the difference, and what were the mistakes I made. Those are mistakes. If you decide to try a technique like this, you're likely to make maybe too, and this way you can learn from my mistakes and skip those little errors that really do make a difference. So please stay tuned to the end of this video, because I will explain it all. So here's what I mean by transparent embossing powder. Do you see how lovely and vibrant the colors against the white are? But once you slide a black piece of cardstock behind it, it loses all that lovely color. let's check it against some yellow. Do you see how orange it all turns? So while it has lovely colors in there, it still picks up the color of the background. That's what transparent embossing powder means. I didn't have any yellow transparent ones, so I just added some yellow with my alcohol markers. And then I added some Versamarking and some clear sparkle embossing powder. So if you don't have colorful transparent embossing powders, you can always use your alcohol markers to add colors on the acetate, and then just add some clear sparkle embossing powder, so that again expands the possibilities on what way you could create some lovely stained glass look using alcohol markers and some little sparkle using your embossing powder. So again, heated this up very well before I applied it to the acetate. And there's a reason why I keep saying heat it up very well. Just stay tuned, I will explain. So I want to add a thin border of black cardstock, but I don't want it to use the vibrancy of the colors. So I apply double-sided tape all around this, and I added a piece of white cardstock before layering it up against that black cardstock using foam tape, double-sided foam tape. And the black cardstock measures 3 7/8 by 7 7/8, so it's just a teeny tiny bit bigger than the white cardstock. And then I'm going to layer this up on my card base, which measures 4 1/4 by 8 1/4 inches. And now you can see that lovely thin frame around that panel. It just brings it all so very well together, especially because I'm using black sentiment as well. So I've cut the sentiments out twice and I layer them up on top of each other using my dry acrylic glue. And then I dipped it into my the embossing ink pad, and using clear gloss heat embossing powder, I'm just going to add some lovely shine to these. I love doing this to embellishments and sentiments because it makes them so nice and sturdy and really shiny, and will match the rest of the theme of this card perfectly. So I'm just using my dry clear glue again to add it to the back of my sentiment, and I'm going to add it on the bottom of my card. So the wishes and the birthday is gonna go on top of that, and it fits perfectly just before the stem of that flower in there. And all that's left to do on this card is just to add some lovely pink gems from Chloe's Creative Cards, and I'm just going to use those light pink ones scattered here and there all over the card using my dry clear glue. I really love how this one is turning out. Stay tuned for some close-up footage at the end of this video. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to show you now the first card that I made, and that is full of mistakes. So it is this one in here, looks identical from the distance. But check this out. You can see the white bit poking through here and there, especially on the leaves, because I didn't layer black on black. I layered white and then I added the black layer just on top. So that was first mistake. Definitely makes a difference using only black for both layers on the top. Second mistake, it does matter what kind of an acetate you're using. On the card we used today, I used the Crafter's Companion heat resistant acetate. On the one on the right, which is full of mistakes, I use this heavy duty heat resistant acetate. Now, this one clearly reacted differently to my heat embossing, but also as well as that, there's a difference in the cardstock that I used. So the ink blended cardstock on top of this first one that I created prior to this video was 250 GSM. Today I used the 300 GSM one. So on the card, that look how badly warped, it's like it's completely wavy on all four sides. I used heavy duty acetate with a lighter weight cardstock, while on the one today that is completely smooth and looking so lovely and professional, I used lighter weight of heat resistant acetate with a much heavier weight cardstock. So there is really a difference in that. So if you're going to try this technique, make sure your cardstock is heavyweight and the heat resistant acetate is a much lighter weight. And also make sure your heat tool is very well heated in advance, so you're exposing your acetate to as little heat as possible. On the card we created today on the right hand side now, I used a much thinner border for the black cardstock, and I think this looks much nicer. On the one I created earlier on the left side in here, the black border is much bigger, and I think the right one just looks much more professional. So this is my card ready. Stay tuned for some close-ups. So out of the 4 die sets that I received from Pretty Gets Gritty in this collection, the Build Me a Buttercup, Bloom Bell, Count Your Blossoms, and the Crazy Daisy. It is the Crazy Daisy, the one that I used today, but I will definitely come back and use the other ones for some lovely techniques as well. I really enjoyed creating this video today. I really hope you like this card, and if you did like today's tutorial, please do not forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet done so, and leave me a comment, hit the like button, and make sure that you hit the notification bell. Make sure you will get notified when I upload my next video. I will see you real soon with my next tutorial. Until then, bye!